Edgar Allan Poe was one of the most fascinating poets in American history. Even today, you can find Poe's works in museums and libraries across the world. Not only did he play a large role in the world of poetry, however, but he also advocated for powerful copyright laws and better wages for writers everywhere. The only thing Poe was missing was a T at the end of his name. Then it would have been Edgar Allan Poet. Poe was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1809. His parents were both actors in the play King Lear and named Poe after a character in the play named Edgar. He had two siblings, one brother and one sister. Early on in Poe's life, his father left him and his siblings to be taken care of by their mother. Sadly, before Poe had turned 3, his mother, father, and brother died tragically of tuberculosis, and this picture is what we predicted he would have looked like when he found out. Because it was unlikely for a 3-year-old to survive in the wilderness, Poe got adopted by the Allan family, who decided it would be best to throw their name into the mix, thus giving Poe his middle name Allan. The Allan family was full of tobacco merchants who during Poe's life attempted to push Edgar to follow the path of mercantilism. Sadly, however, Poe decided that money was not what he wanted, and pushed aside that dream for one he would soon become famous for. Poe set out to attend the University of Virginia. However, he had only about a third of the money he needed to attend. This resulted in debt, which led Poe to gambling and many other things that kids should not try at home. This, in turn, resulted in an economically depressed Poe. On top of all this, Poe found out that the woman he had recently gotten engaged to, Elmira Royster, was engaged to someone else. Now Poe has no money, his heart is broken, and eventually this leads to tension in his family. Poe even stormed out on his stepfather at one point, saying that he was going to go become a great poet and find adventure. Later this year, at the young age of 18, Edgar published his first book, Tamerlane. His stepmother died shortly after as well. Poe did not arrive in time to be there for the funeral. After all of his depression, Poe decided to move to Baltimore, where his entire family gave him the cold shoulder. Luckily, he found sanctuary with his aunt, Maria Clem, who welcomed Poe into her home. Because of this, Poe eventually fell in love with his cousin, Virginia Clem. She was 13. When Poe began his writing career, he began in poverty. In fact, through most of Poe's career, he was unpopular and lived in poverty. Poe did not gain any large attention until after his death, when Charles Baudelaire recognized the genius in Poe's work and started to gain him much attention. Soon after this, he married his cousin Virginia to express his joy of the occasion. He wrote the poem, Eulalie, in which he speaks of how all of his troubles, his cries, and moans are gone forever because he gained this blushing bride. The only downside is that he was still dirt poor and his wife had gotten tuberculosis. This threw Poe into a time of sadness, which resulted in a very famous poem in which Poe speaks of arriving from across the ocean in a hot air balloon. This was called The Balloon Hoax, and he wrote it just like it were a real newspaper article, and everyone lined up for their copy. When people found out about the hoax, they didn't really care. He was Poe. They loved him. The Raven, which is considered his most famous piece, was what began Poe's political movement. The popularity that spun out due to this poetry led Poe to demand not only higher wages for himself, but also for more equality and opportunity for writers nationwide. This also led him to fight for better copyright laws in order to protect writers from their work being stolen. This became one of his largest political endeavors, and he was not only able to get better laws passed, but also fought for higher wages for writers everywhere. Through all of this, Poe established quite a great culture in America. Not only was he well known and followed for his scathing critiques, which are still read and used today, but his own writing pioneered many new and unique styles of writing, such as horror, which can be found in The Raven, and science fiction, which you can see in his Balloon Hoax. Poe's writings went even further, not only to inspire many future poets such as H.P. Lovecraft and Charles Baudelaire, but also to serve as entertainment to the Northern Civil War soldiers. Poe has even inspired many films and pieces of music to this day. In fact, his words and his personality have been put in shows like The Simpsons. His name was mentioned in the Beatles song, I Am the Walrus. In many ways, you could say that Poe has inspired the world with his words. Many different genres and ideas have spun off of stuff that came from this little depressed poet, and America's culture specifically has thrived because of him. If only he had a T on his name. I really wish he had a T on his name.